Mueller. Joining us now, Congressman Adam Schiff, Democrat from California, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. I want to get to, I got to say, I mean, as a House watcher, I think you and I probably have never heard someone say, I can't talk about the most important issue of the day. I have to go to a copyright hearing. I think that's a new one.
Well, it is hard to top copyright in terms of interest.
Yeah. I want to get your reaction, actually, to something that Michael Wolff just said on this show, because it's an issue that in a criminal case would be left to a jury, and in an impeachment case would be brought to you. And that is, if there is an obstruction of justice case that is presented to the House of Representatives, and one of the elements of an obstruction of justice case is that the president ordered the firing of Robert Mueller. What Michael Wolff just said is he was saying that all the time. He was saying fire Mueller all the time. I want to fire Mueller all the time. Michael Wolff said it was like wallpaper. And so people around him did not take it seriously. And it might, in the president's mind, never have been a specific order. And since it was never carried out, he may not believe that he ever issued such an order, no matter what people quote him as saying.
Well, apparently Doug McCann took it seriously and was willing to resign rather than carry it out. So this doesn't sound like it was an idle comment. I wouldn't describe this as wallpaper based on what the New York Times, the Washington Post, and others have reported, but rather a fixation that goes to the president's intent. What really leaps out at me about this disclosure, this new report, is how much in common it has with the Comey situation. With the firing of Comey, what the president had at his disposal were memos from Rod Rosenstein and from Jeff Sessions that provided a pretext, another explanation to give to the public for why Comey was being fired. That is, he treated Hillary Clinton unfairly. Now, that is obviously not very plausible, and of course the one who made it abundantly clear that was not the real motivation was the president himself. But similarly here, with the attempt to fire Bob Mueller, you had these explanations ginned up for him. Well, it was over golf dues that Bob Mueller had a dispute with the golf club over, or it was over the fact that the Mueller firm worked for Jared Kushner, even though Mueller didn't. So this is another effort to produce pretext to conceal the real reason for getting rid of Mueller. And that does go to intent, that key issue in an obstruction case. One final point, Lawrence, is the fact that the president wanted so badly to get rid of Jeff Sessions. And why? Because Jeff Sessions recused himself. And why did that bother the president? Because it led to the appointment of Bob Mueller. That wasn't about dues at the golf club. That was about the president perceiving the Russia investigation as a threat and wanting to act on that.
And in the Sessions case, you also have Michael Wolff and other sources quoting the president as saying things like, where's my Roy Cohn, and using the word protect. Who's going to protect me, expecting the Attorney General to protect him. And it strikes me that the use of that word would be of special interest in an obstruction case.
I think that's exactly right. The president made clear that what he believes he's entitled to an attorney general is not someone who is loyal to the department, not someone who's loyal to the American people, but someone who is loyal to him. And not on just a garden variety issue, but on the Russia investigation, which is paramount for him. So I think all of this does go to intent. And certainly Bob Mueller, this New York Times and Washington Post story, is not news to him because he's been interviewing all these people in the White House and around the president. And I think Ron is exactly right. There's probably a lot that we don't know that the special counsel does that relates to the issue of the president's intent.
How secure is Bob Mueller's job, do you think, in the view of Congress at this point? I know that when he was first appointed, you got universal acclaim for him, especially on the Senate side. There wasn't a single Republican senator who had a negative word to say about him. And in fact, most of them were gushing praise about Robert Mueller. That has quieted down. You don't hear that. And today, no screams of outrage from any Republicans in the Congress, no one rushing to a microphone to say this absolutely must not happen. He absolutely must not be fired. Has Robert Mueller's support among Republicans in Congress collapsed? Could he be fired?
You know, I wouldn't say that it's collapsed, but you certainly see a weakening of the spine of many of the folks in the GOP in Congress, who, when the first suggestions were made by Ruddy and others that the president could fire Mueller, and we had no idea that actually the president tried to fire him, you had a groundswell that was in favor of bipartisan legislation that would secure Mueller's job, that would provide a right of appeal by Mueller if he were fired. No one has acted on that in the majority. That legislation is still languishing. And what has happened, frankly, is very concerning, and that is there's been an escalation of attacks on Mueller in the kind of right-wing blogosphere, as well as on Fox. And there's been a wholesale attack on the FBI in order to discredit the investigation. All of that is a signal to the White House, unfortunately, that, hey, they might shrug if he took the step of firing Mueller. People need to speak out now. People that are asked what they think about this, they need to speak out now, and it's more important than ever for Republicans in Congress to speak out and say, this is a red line that must not be crossed, that would provoke a constitutional crisis, that would bring down this administration. Don't go there, because, Lawrence, I think depending on where the special counsel investigation goes to, if the special counsel, for example, is looking at money laundering, as I believe he should, you could see another outburst, outrage by the president that results in another order to fire Bob Mueller, and the whole cascade of events